Hi, I'm Sebastian, and I'd like to present to you research that I've been conducting together with my colleagues and friends Tom Mom and Justin Janssen from the Rotterdam School of Management, as well as with Q Hui from INSEAD in Singapore. It is about unit ambidexterity, and as industry dynamics and competition often unfold at the business unit level these days, that means business units compete in different strategic domains. There has been a growing stream of research suggesting that business unit ambidexterity is important for performance and for the viability of units, and as such as the firms that manage these units. Ambidexterity at the unit level enables a unit to benefit from leveraging and refining existing competencies and product and market combinations, as well as exploring new opportunities and renewing the unit for future competitiveness and to tackle future challenges. So what do we do here? We would like to go beyond research that has traditionally looked only at indirect ways in which senior leaders can create unit ambidexterity, for instance, through establishing a supportive context or through implementing dual structures, which leave these problems and tensions to senior managers to be resolved, but they may fractionate the organization as such. We specifically look at the roles of middle managers who have been identified as pivotal boundary spanners in organizations and as critical change agents. Especially my colleague Kui Hui has done excellent research on that in his 2001 HBR or 2002 ASQ. Now, so the problem is that traditionally the relationships of intra-TMT characteristics and processes have been studied in isolation of TMT interaction with lower levels. Or from the perspective of middle managers have not been considered as a group of actors that whose interaction both horizontally and vertically is contingent upon how interpersonal processes and information exchange with other actors work out. So we do look at both vertical and horizontal interpersonal processes. First, the vertical ones, because there has been a lot of research on strategy formation and unit learning that has identified vertical interpersonal processes to be conducive and to be formative for business units. However, this research has been more in the form of reviews and conceptual papers. What has been identified is that vertical interactions allow to reduce information asymmetries, attract top management attention, access appropriate resources, validate and legitimize business unit level choices, and generate a commitment in the unit through a better interest alignment among senior and middle managers. So as such, kind of alleviating the agency problem within the company. So, but what we still understand very little about is how these vertical interactions influence unit ambidexterity. We argue that integrative bargaining and cognitive flexibility are two essential mechanisms that are rooted in information processing and interpersonal process theory, because they help middle managers to reconcile tensions between exploration and exploitation within unit boundaries and are essential to manage forces for stability and change in unit strategy formation. Complementary to that, one could expect there are horizontal interactions, so between middle managers and their peers in other units, that can foster learning and innovativeness, that enable middle managers to tap into new ideas, skills, best practices, and also the lessons learned from trial and error proceedings of other units, thus potentially reducing the cost and risk of exploration, as well as uncovering ideas how to exploit even more effectively. What we are particularly keen on learning is whether there are complementarities and trade-offs between horizontal and vertical interpersonal processes, and if there are positive or negative reinforcements, because traditionally research has considered these types of interpersonal processes separately. There have been either studies on horizontal interactions or, and that's only very few actually, on vertical interactions, we develop theory about both and test these propositions. The first proposition is that integrative bargaining at the interface of top and middle management is positively related to unit ambidexterity. There are several reasons for this that go back to the definition of integrative bargaining, which stems from literature on negotiation, which is that it's essentially when integrative bargaining occurs when senior and middle managers interact in a way that they seek to create joint value through focusing on complementary interests and seeing, mutual benefits for creating joint value. This brings advantages to the unit in form of the middle manager who is in charge of a unit being able to gain autonomy for his initiatives if he gets his senior manager to sign off, to gain legitimacy for ideas, and through this negotiation generate realistic insights as to what is needed for effective implementation. Thus, resource allocation will also be better. Moreover, Slack, which has been realized as being pivotal, especially for exploration efforts, but in general, for harnessing the tensions between exploration and exploitation. There's a tendency for senior managers to withdraw Slack from units if it's no longer required. However, through integrative bargaining, middle managers can, for instance, convince the senior leader that it's in the interest of the unit to maintain Slack in the unit in order to be able to balance explorative and exploitative processes. And then there's the commitment advantage. If middle managers engage in integrative bargaining with their senior leaders, they will benefit from higher level of commitment that comes with creative and intensive processing of alternative solutions with their senior leaders and stimulating debate. Second, we argue that cognitive flexibility at the interface of top and middle management is positively related to unit ambidexterity. This is more for socio-cognitive arguments that it enables new recombinations of exploration-exploitation activities. It stimulates paradoxical thinking among middle managers. It is a conduit for senior managers to provide their broad and generalist experience to middle managers and propose alternative solutions which the middle manager in the unit may have not thought of, and also to debate about which activities actually should take place within the unit and which could possibly be outsourced, thereby alleviating some of the workload in the unit. Then the third direct and final direct effect in this model is about horizontal knowledge exchange among middle managers, which is also positively related to unit ambidexterity. And it is defined as an exchange of combination of task information, know-how, feedback, and transfer of best practices. This allows middle managers to imitate successful exploration exploitation recombination strategies, to tap into the expertise of colleagues, to be challenged to adopt different logics, to consider new perspectives, because their colleagues, may have different backgrounds and experiences that, can inspire a middle manager to go beyond his dominant logic. And it is necessary to benchmark and test unit initiatives against what has been done in the past and how other organizations are faring, thus is stimulating higher levels of performance, especially in terms of balancing innovation and efficiency. Then we come to the interaction effects. First, we deal with the complementarities between integrative bargaining and horizontal knowledge exchange. We think that the redirection of resources is necessary for leveraging the insights that middle managers can gain from horizontal collaboration. As such, what they learn, these best practices, to implement them, they can use the integrative bargaining to get the resources and the sign-off and also the legitimacy to implement in their units what they've learned from lateral interactions. And then we looked at the trade-offs between cognitive flexibility in vertical interactions and horizontal knowledge exchange, and we argued that if there are too many options that are developed. It can lead to attention residue, to persistent cognitive processes that distract from moving on and actually implementing ideas that can be horizontally sourced, and that not only the analytical burden increases, but also the emotional burden, and it might put middle managers in a hard place if they get advice from both senior managers and their colleagues, because there's obviously a compelling reason to go with what your senior manager says, but it may not be the best solution. Thus it may increase role conflict and exacerbate the problem of relating with multiple people. Also, in a way, senior managers may be more or less redundantized, as they can provide generalist expertise and experience, but that they may not have specific solutions that are catered to idiosyncratic unit features. And thus, senior managers' advice may not always be conducive and actually better than what they learn horizontally, and as such, just providing a burden that distracts from handling an already complex and tension-fraught task like implementing unit ambidexterity. So what's the empirical approach? We collected data from senior and middle managers, and we separated the data collection to avoid common method bias. The middle managers reported on the measures of the interaction because they have less power. So this brings us to the correlation table and to our results. I will quickly explain that we did find a negative effect of the control variable centralization on unit ambidexterity. That's as expected, as it is actually reducing unit autonomy and inhibiting it from implementing novel solutions to tension and paradoxical tasks. The main effects, as we see in all models, actually are supported, and the interaction effects are also supported, with the interesting insight that there are both complementarities between integrative bargaining and horizontal knowledge exchange, and trade-offs between cognitive flexibility and horizontal knowledge exchange. The interesting thing is that on its own, horizontal knowledge exchange, through generating different alternatives and considering multiple options, has a positive effect on unit ambidexterity. However, middle managers who engage in both horizontal knowledge exchange and in a lot of this discussion and option generation with senior managers apparently are less able to implement ambidexterity in their units. So what do these findings suggest? First, they extend present theorizing that's rooted in traditional forms of organizing that a TMT initiates and a middle manager implements strategies. Rather, strategy formation at the unit level is a more collaborative process in which middle managers coordinate and learn and collaborate both horizontally and vertically. So we contribute with emergent theory on the interplay of senior and middle managers. We consider interaction mechanisms that have thus far only been theoretically considered in, for instance, Ra's et al.'s AMR paper. They posit that integrative bargaining and cognitive flexibility are good for everything in a way. We see that cognitive flexibility does come with downsides, and one could possibly expect a curvilinear effect in many interpersonal processes and interpersonal interactions. As the more you interact with someone, it comes with costs. At least the returns should be marginal. The more you interact with the person, because it distracts from dealing with your day-to-day business. These results seem promising for theory development, as well as generating insights for management practice in terms of establishing a hierarchy among the mechanisms. Integrative bargaining is the most fruitful one. We see that unit ambidexterity, can be nurtured apart from setting the context through unit leaders. Who are these middle managers? Unit leaders' direct interaction with especially senior managers, and as resources can be obtained and activities possibly outsourced for focusing on a particular domain to explore and exploit in order to be able to focus and balance exploration exploitation activities within unit boundaries, which is essential as the units are more and more accountable for their own performance and have to both align and